Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Female Male Perspective with my co-host, Eddie Cunningham, and I am Tina Valiant. Hi, Eddie.
Aloha. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Real good.
Good. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that you have actually chosen called the white knight syndrome.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what that is, but I have an idea.
So this is going to be a fun topic. This is one of those that I've been looking forward to. I've kind of put off because I really wanted to do more research into it because I had my own ideas. And the thing is there's men and women can both have this syndrome. And I mean, it's not like an official syndrome that psychology puts out there, but it can be. There's talks about it in the psychology field. But to me, the white knight syndrome is kind of the idea, a masculine idea of being the savior, being the hero. Again, thank you, Disney, for telling us that that was our role as men, was to always be the hero that kisses the dead person in the woods and they wake up and you live happily ever after. I full on own and admit that as part of my journey of self-discovery and my own self-ownership in my last marriage, I went into it being the white knight. I had met a widow that had 3 kids. I was a single dad with 2 boys. And, there was this whole sob story about how horrible her life was and how, she was almost ready to divorce her husband anyways. And then he passed away, which was just double as hard. And the kids were hurting and she was hurting and everyone was hurting. And here I was kind of in my prime. I was just getting started in the music industry. I had been out speaking and talking on the 4 agreements. I was doing charity work. Everything I was doing was about healing others. And so it just kind of seemed fit and I fell right into it. And I did. I was this 26-year-old white knight when I met my last wife. And I fell into that role. And it was a role that allowed me to be controlled, manipulated, abused, and taken advantage of. And I had to take complete ownership over that I allowed myself to be that. Where it comes from, I think it's different for a lot of us. Some of us, it's because we came from backgrounds where we had nothing and we know what that feels like and we don't want others to feel that way. For some of us, it was horribly abusive backgrounds. Maybe it was a financial lacking growing up. But a lot of it was taught to us by this idea that men are supposed to be the saviors of the family, the protectors of the family. And I still to this day don't fully disagree with all of that. But you can't let it get to a point that that's your sole purpose, to where you lose yourself in the fixing and the healing of others. You absolutely can't do it. And men and women are both guilty of the white knight syndrome. And as odd as it sounds, it actually is very self-serving in a very negative and unhealthy way. It is, for most of us that had that and acted that way, it's because we lacked some self-confidence and self-esteem. And that's the way we built ourselves up, is look at me, I'm saving the day. Look at me, I'm fixing people. Look at me, I'm healing people. When really it becomes an avoidance of working on where the real problem is, which is inside of us. We don't turn around and actually fix ourselves. So that's my idea of what it means to have or be the white knight syndrome.
I agree with you that women can have this as well as men can have this. You and I, it's no secret, we both have that need inside of both of us to help other people. And I have also been the person who thought that by loving somebody enough and showing them what real love could be like, that somehow that could save them and make them want to be better. Instead of looking at the person and who they really were, I always looked at people and their potential and thought that I could help them reach that potential.
And it's very much ego driven. to say, I can fix them, I can heal them, I can love them enough to change. And I did that for a very long time in my marriage. You know, the way a lot of unhealthy people act is they will tell stories to both be the victim and the hero in their own story to get people to step up and do what they want. You know, it was like we talked about in a previous podcast about dropping the hints and whatnot. That's like the ultimate form of it. And so I was sold on the story of how hard life was growing up, how hard the previous marriage was, how he was never around as a parent, how sex was horrible between them, how he was abusive. And I heard all these stories and I just automatically believed them. And I went right into, okay, so I'm going to be the best husband I can be, the best father I can be, the best lover I could be, the best everything that I could be to, you know, pull her out of her misery and her pain and whatnot. And the truth was, again, it really wasn't about helping her. In the end, it was really about me filling in the lack of confidence, the lack of self-esteem, and the healing that I needed on the inside. Because there was the small part of me, without coming right out and saying it, that was hoping that if I loved her enough, if I healed her enough, that she would turn around and reciprocate, and I would finally feel loved, and I would finally be healed. And it's just never, ever going to work out like that. And it's most people that are having the white knight syndrome, that's what it's about, is they're hoping that I can get my partner to a place where they will turn around and reciprocate to me. But that's never how it works at all.
And I had to learn that too. I had to learn through a lot of intense therapy. My ex was an addict, and I thought that if I loved him enough that he wouldn't have the need for the substances. I thought that if I loved him enough that and was there for him enough and provided the lifestyle that he desired, that it would make him a happier person and in turn not want to use drugs or drink. And I was sadly mistaken. It had nothing to do with me at all. And again, it comes from ego. It's like, I have the ability to make this person want a different life. It doesn't work that way. And you're absolutely right. For me, it was, so if I love him enough, he will reciprocate and love me and see that our life together is so much better than it was before me. Well, that comes from ego.
Yep.
Life is better with me.
Oh, and it is. It becomes a way to also make the other person be addicted to you. And you both end up really becoming addicted to each other, and you just play off of each other in very, very, very unhealthy ways. A lot of, and there's marriages that stay together for decades under this, because they negotiate it to a point that they just continue feeding each other in this cycle, and they just never pull themselves out of it. And the truth is, the only way to pull yourself out of it is to practice self-love. We talk about that a lot on this podcast. The end of my marriage, I actually never set out to divorce my wife, even though we were very unhealthy for each other. The way it came about was really, I have to give my mom credit for kind of opening my eyes. My eyes had already been started to be open, but we were doing the Relay for Life. My mother had breast cancer, and she was a very amazing, insightful, and spiritual woman. And I was at the Relay for Life. You have to have someone on the track for 12 hours from 6 at night till 6 in the morning, and you take breaks and whatnot. And I had fallen asleep in the tent, and I woke up with my mom touching my face. She was patting my face, and she said, "Hey, baby," she said, "I'm gonna let the cancer take me." And at that point, she had already fought it for 3 years. And I said, "Okay, Mom." And she said, can you do me a favor?" And I said, "What's that?" She goes, "I need you to promise me 2 things. She said, "Take care of your dad." And I said, "Of course." And she said, "And go be happy." And I said, Mom, I am happy." And she goes, "Oh, honey, you're not." She goes, "You're not." She goes, you don't have a good marriage. You've got, you're sad. You're so busy taking care of everyone else that you've never fully fixed you. You've never healed you. And she goes, you remember the man that you were before you got married, larger than life, working on his music career, performing in front of people, talking on stage. She goes, that's who you're meant to be, not this person that is just serving everyone without basically rebuilding myself. And so I promised her that I would seek happiness. And at the time, I really didn't know exactly what that was going to look like. But you fast forward to my mom's funeral a few months later. As soon as she decided to go, she basically went. She died the day before Thanksgiving. A week later, we had her services. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful ceremony. My aunt Rosie, who's Indonesian, has this amazing voice. She got up and sang Ave Maria. All of the family was there. I mean, we had over 100 people came, and almost all of them were family members. I was in my firefighter dress uniform from my honor guard. My brother was in his army dress uniform. We carried the casket. I mean, it was just a beautiful ceremony. And when it was all over, we get back home, and my wife comes into the room, and she just kind of goes off. She goes, oh my gosh, this is a sad day for me. I feel like I've lost, my mom. She was like another mom to me. Reminds me when my husband died, and this makes me feel again like I did when my dad died, and I've lost so many people in my life. And it was just on and on about her. And I must have been kind of making a face, because she stopped and looked at me, and she goes, what? And I just said, I'm going to go be happy. And she, which I know was an odd statement for the moment anyways, but she gave me a weird look, and she goes, okay, go be happy. And I go, no, hon, I need you to come sit down and understand what this means. And, I told her, I said, we've fed off of each other in unhealthy ways for a long time, and we both have ownership in this. It's both of us. I've built these expectations. You lived up to these expectations. I mean, this is both of us in this. And I said, I need you to understand that the man that I used to be, that you fell in love with, the man that was larger than life, doing big things, I'm going to get back to doing that. I'm going to read my books again. I'm going to start working on me again. I'm going to learn to love myself again, and I'm going to go be happy. And she goes, fine, go do it. And I said, no, I need you to understand that the more I learn to love myself, the less of you I'm going to tolerate in my life. And she's like, are you telling me you want a divorce? And I said, no. I said, and I told her this, I said, I would love nothing more than in 5 years from now for you and I to be sitting there somewhere together, holding hands, crying with each other, saying, we did it. We fucking did it. Excuse my language. That we conquered this. I said, I want that. I said, but I'm no longer going to put hope in it. I said, my goal is to focus on me. I'm not going to focus on everyone else. I mean, I'm going to be here. I'm still going to do my duties. I'm still going to be there as a dad and as a husband. But I have to focus on me now. It's time for me to heal. It's time for me to grow. It's time for me to go be happy again. And that was the beginning of me letting go of this white knight syndrome, where I felt like it was my job to fix and heal everyone in my life. And in doing that, even though I thought I was being a great man by doing all those things, I was actually destroying the relationships in my life, because I was spoiling people, and I was making them devalue me because I wasn't valuing what I was able to give. So I did. I started working on me, and I told her, I said, you're invited to be a part of this. You're absolutely invited to be a part of this. I want you to grow with me, but I have to apologize. And this was a big one for me. And I told her, I said, I have to apologize to you because I have not loved you unconditionally. When you are a white knight, you are a conditional lover. You are not unconditional. Even though you think you're acting unconditional by serving everyone else, you're not. You're a conditional lover because you're loving them, hoping that on the condition that it's going to change them, it's going to fix them, it's going to heal them, and it's eventually going to get returned to you. So I told her, I said, I apologize because I have been loving you conditionally, hoping it would change you, hoping it would heal you, hoping that we would end up with a good marriage eventually. I said, but from this point forward, I promise you, I'm going to love you unconditionally, and I'm going to accept your choice to be who you want to be. I hope that's someone that wants to be with me and stay with me, but I respect you and I will still love you even as we drift apart. If you don't change with me, there's going to come a point where our hearts are so far apart, we're going to get divorced. And that is almost word for word what I said to her that day. I didn't want to get a divorce. That wasn't my point. My point was I wanted us to grow. But I told her in these exact words, I will never, ever carry your emotional weight as my task again. It's not my responsibility to carry your weight. I will, when you're struggling and you're weak and you're tired, I'll carry a little bit of it to help you, but I will no longer be responsible for you, for your emotional issues, for your, the mental growth, your spiritual growth, all of it. None of that is my responsibility. I give it all back to you because I had taken responsibility for it for so long. And that was selfish of me to do so. And it was wrong of me to do so. Because all it did was weaken her as well. If she didn't get to carry her own weight, she wasn't able to build her own strengths. And that was one of the biggest my biggest contribution to the ending of our marriage. So I gave it all back to her. And I said, I'm never going to carry it anymore. I'm not taking responsibility for it. I'm not going to take personally anything that you say, feel, and think and do. But I'm here to talk about and work through whatever you want to work through. And I did. I went to work on me. I went to work on learning to love myself again. Like I said, I read the 4 Agreements, the Mastery of Love all over again, and started focusing on those things. And every relationship in my life began to adjust. Some of them very painfully. Unfortunately, there was a lot of people that were so used to feeding off of me that when I pulled that away from them, it became about trying to abuse me back into my secondary role in their life, or they just went away. And at first that hurt a lot. But the refinement on the backside of learning to love yourself is absolutely worth any of the small bits of pain that you go through from losing them, because the people that will leave your life when you're fixing and improving yourself were never meant to be in your life. And they were never going to be in your life in a healthy way. So anyone you lose in the pursuit of self-mastery absolutely should not be in your life. And it is a blessing, even if it hurts in the moment.
It's interesting that you say that. I first started learning some of that when I was still back in Florida. And I remember I used to have this business partner, and her whole thing was, their perception is your reality. So whatever you put out there, that's who you are in their mind. So that's who you are. And I bought into that for a while. And then all of a sudden I was like, you know what? No, F that. I'm me. I'm going to be me. I'm going to be my authentic self. I don't care what they think about me. It has nothing to do with that. I'm just going to be me. Period. End of story. It was amazing how different I became through that, because part of me taking care of other people and trying to fix them was because I wanted people to perceive me that way. It mattered.
Sure.
And when I started saying, no, I'm going to be my authentic self. I'm going to be who I am. I'm not buying into your bull anymore. Like, this is who I am. Love me, hate me, doesn't matter. I'm going to be true to me. I lost a lot of friends in that. And it was people that were sucking from me just continuously, all of my energy, their drama, their this, their that, their problems, their marriage, their whatever the case may be. And it was this releasing, freeing spirit. And yes, I was sad at the friendship not being there anymore. But I realized very quickly that it was because those were the takers that were surrounding me. Those were the people that knew if they manipulated me this way, that I would give in. If they asked me for something, I couldn't say no because I cared what they thought of me.
Yep.
And I really became my authentic self during that time. And it's so funny because I have people, people meet me either when I've been on stage teaching a class or whatever, or, talking about my book, or people read the book or whatever, and they see who I am now. And they hear that I was in a marriage where I was completely controlled for 12 years. I was in a marriage with an addict later on that, sucked the life out of me, literally, and all of these different things. And they're like, how is that even possible? You're so strong. And I'm like, actually, I'm not. I'm an M&M. I have a hard outer shell and I have a mushy gushy inside. And the reality of it is that sometimes I love people to a fault that is a detriment to myself. And I've had to learn how to love myself first and more, so that I know when to put in those healthy boundaries and know when I need to take a step back. That
You know,
it's
it's
good for me.
it's interesting because love is one of the most universally innate and natural things for us to do. However, it's also one of the most mistaught parts of who we are. And when I say mistaught, we start learning, we have this overabundance of love when we're babies. When we're babies, we are unconditional to ourselves and to everyone around us. There's no judgments, bigotry, racism, nothing built into how we love, nothing. Yet we start learning, and it starts with our parents, of as they withhold and as they give, as we do what we're supposed to, as we don't do what we're supposed to, we start learning to use love in the same unhealthy way. And it just gets edified as we meet other people who are also unhealthy in how they give love and how they receive love. And it does take a point. Unfortunately, for most people, it takes an absolute breakdown for them to go, I have nothing left. I have to, if I want love, give it back to myself. And the crazy thing is it's not about learning to do that. It's about remembering to do that, to who you, to love that way again, to love that way unconditionally. It is freeing, it is abundant, and it is infinite to be unconditional in your love for yourself. And in doing that, you're able to love others. Don Miguel Ruiz, in the book Mastery of Love, again, I talk about it a lot because I absolutely love it. He gives an amazing analogy of what he calls the magic kitchen. And he says, imagine this, imagine that in your home, you have this kitchen and it's a magic kitchen, and anything you want happens. You want your favorite drink, you walk to the fridge, you open it up, and there's your favorite drink. You want your favorite baked cookie or whatever, you go and you open the oven and there it is, fresh, and you just pull it out. Just with a thought, you have an abundance of fulfillment. Everything, your pantry is always full. As a matter of fact, you have so much abundance that you can invite anyone else to come over to your home and you can give to them in abundance, knowing that it's just going to be refilled because you have more than enough to give. So you can give away as much as you want to as many people as you want, and it's going to be filled. That's the way we're born. But then you got to imagine at this point, you're sitting there in absolute abundance. Everything you could ever possibly want for fulfillment is there. And there's a knock on your door. You go to the door and you open it up, and there's a person standing there holding a half-hour old pepperoni pizza that they're delivering to your house. They open it up and show it to you, and they go, hey, I'll give you as much of this as you want if you be who I tell you to be. If you give me what I tell you to give me, if you do what I tell you to do, I'll give you as much of this as you want. You're going to look at them and go, no, like, first off, it's half-hour old pizza. It's only pepperoni pizza. And no, like, I'm not going to give all of these things up just to have this low standard of fulfillment. They'll go away. Well, then imagine that something happens that begins to break your kitchen, small things, and you end up with less abundance of it because you start to choke off the things. Your pantry is less full. Your oven doesn't always work right. Your fridge isn't always full of the things that you want. You'll start to get hungry, and eventually the kitchen turns dark and it stops producing completely. Now you're really hungry. After a while, you get to a point that you're starving. And then there's that same knock again. You go to the door and open it. Same person standing there with that pepperoni pizza, but this time you're starving and that pizza actually looks good. You will never have to go hungry again. I will give you as much of this as you want, as long as you do what I tell you to do, be who I tell you to be, and give me what I tell you to give me. Most people, that's where they're at in lives. Their kitchen, which is their ability to love, their magic kitchen, is so broken and ineffective that they are hungry, they are starving, and they look outside of themselves for that temporary fulfillment. But every slice of pizza that you eat, it might be all right, but it's never going to be lasting or fulfilling. And so few people ever go back into the kitchen and go, all right, what's broken and how do I fix this? And start learning and remembering to live in that abundance of love again. That's the natural state of who we are supposed to be, who we were created to be. We were created in absolute unconditional love. That's who we're supposed to be. That's what we need to remember and start living.
That's an interesting analogy, because whenever we're lacking as individuals in anything in our life, I like, especially love, but anything, I could see where the guy with the pizza box showing up at the door and telling you that it's in abundance and blah, blah, blah. It's interesting because, like, while you were telling that story, I was thinking about so many women that come to me and, well, yeah, I mean, I have sex on the first date because I want them to love me. I want them to like me. And they think that that's going to be the connection.
Yeah.
That's going to suck that person in to give them what they need. It's the same concept, right? It's the same.
Oh, yeah.
I'm lacking personally. So I'm going to grasp on to whatever I can to make me feel better, whether it be trying to save or fix somebody else, whether it be trying to have instant gratification, thinking it will give me long-term gratification. Even drugs, alcohol, any of it all comes from the same place.
And that's the thing that it's funny. So whenever I've told this story, whether it's at a conference, whether it's, just in mentoring someone, almost always the person says to themselves, oh, I'm the person with the kitchen. And for the most part you are, but when your kitchen's broken and you've got a little bit left, some people become the pizza delivery person. Like you were talking about, your friend who goes out and has sex on the first date, she's the pizza delivery person. She's looking for someone that feeds off of her in the way she's willing to give, which for her it's sex, it's her body. So she's saying, here, if you do what I tell you to do and I'll give this to you. And that's what she's offering. And a lot of us end up falling into that role. We find a little bit of something that we think people will value in us, and we go and give it, such as the white knight syndrome. We find that in ourselves and we go, and I was the pizza guy. I was going out this is all I got. I got my white knight stuff. I got the fact that I'll love you I'll love you crazy, and I'll do all these things for you, and I'll make you feel loved, and I'll make up for all the feelings that you don't have and you haven't been able to feel in your life if you eventually love me back. I'm not expecting it now, but eventually I would love for you to love me back.
Well, and I think that for me, anytime, like back in the days of me trying to save people from themselves, it was also so that I didn't have to focus on myself.
Yeah.
Because if I'm focused on other people and their issues look far worse to me than mine do, even though mine are just as bad. But it takes the emphasis off of me and puts the emphasis on them so that I don't have to face it. Yep. So that's the interesting side of what we're talking about as well.
One of the parts of unconditionally loving yourself, and again, this is where all change starts. It starts with the unconditional love of self. Here's one of the biggest obstacles. Go back just a little bit. Here's one of the biggest obstacles to change, because we become our greatest abusers, because you'll only tolerate the amount of abuse that you already abuse yourself. If someone abuses you more than you abuse yourself, you'll actually put a stop to it, or at least try to. If they abuse you less, you'll think you're not worthy of them, that they're too good for you, basically. So most people abuse us right up to the point that we abuse ourselves. Most of us have learned, because we were domesticated this way, with punishment and reward. We were punished when we were a bad kid. We were rewarded when we were a good kid. And eventually we took on that role of domesticating ourselves, and we punish ourselves when we're bad or wrong, and we reward ourselves when we're good, or we do what we think we're supposed to, or live up to the ideas that we have. Instead, I'm trying to get like two thoughts here in on it. When you have to admit you're wrong, usually one of the first things people do is abuse themselves. And it's usually the voice of whoever domesticated them. So for some of us, it's things like, you're an idiot, you're stupid, you're not worthy enough, what the hell's wrong with you? I had a pretty harsh voice within me for a very long time. And so because of that, I avoided change, because I knew that the minute I admitted that I needed to change something, I would tear myself down. the hell's wrong with you? Are you an idiot? Are you retarded? Because that was something I heard a lot. That was something that I would say to myself. And it wasn't until I started going, it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to want to change. It's okay to have things that you need to fix, flaws that you need to fix, and loving myself through them, that I finally started to change. But most of us avoid change because we know the very first thing that comes after admitting we need to change is self-abuse.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that we don't want to change or want a better life. It's just that we're running away from that abuse.
Mm-hmm.
So the first step in real self-mastery is learning to let go of that inner voice of abuse and do loving. And one of the ways I do this with clients is I'll sit with them. So I'll have a client that's going, I'm going through this and this is what's happening. And I just wish I could change. And I'd be like, all right, let me ask you this. If your daughter was going through the exact same thing and had made the exact same mistake, would you call her an idiot like you just called yourself? Well, no.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if your daughter, say she was older and she came to you, say she was 25 and she came to you and she just had a horrible breakup and these were all the mistakes she had made in a relationship, they were all the same mistakes you just made. Are you going to look at her and go, you're an idiot? What the hell's wrong with you? Are you stupid? You should have known better. Why did you do that again? Is that how you would talk to your daughter? No, absolutely not. What would you do? Well, I'd take her in my arms and I'd cry with her and I'd tell her I love her and say, baby, it's okay. We make these mistakes so that we can learn from them, so that we can grow from them. And you know what? You're going to do better the next time. I said, yes. And why aren't you talking to yourself like that? And it's such a simple visual, but it is so true.
And profound.
It's very profound.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would never do that to my kids. And so I started working on it. And again, not that I was this flawless parent, because there was a couple of times I got angry at my kids and snapped. But the funny thing was, and you can ask my kids this, but I might have said something in the moment because it was a habit. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Are you stupid? But I would immediately follow it up with a private conversation with them where I would say, look, I love you. I want you to know that I absolutely don't believe that. And I'm asking you not to take that on. Don't take that on as a belief that you think you're stupid, and don't take it on that I think you're stupid, because I don't. I think you're absolutely brilliant. I love you. That's just the old me that I'm still working on. And I ask you not to take it on. Don't carry that with you forward like I've done. I would have that conversation with them each time. Again, it's not about perfection, but I started having to have those conversations with myself. God, I'm an idiot. Why did I do that again? I'd be like, hey, Ed, stop. Look, it's okay. We're going to do better the next time. Let's move forward. And I started, the way I was working with being a better parent for my kids, I started working on being a better mentor for myself in the exact same way, in the exact same language. And I have over the years gotten better and better and better. I'm still not flawless at it, but I'm doing my best.
It takes time.
Yeah.
It's our training.
Especially if those agreements are really deeply seated or were very harshly pushed into you. They're not always easy. And that's one of the things I discovered on this big trip that I took quite a few weeks ago, was that there were things that are so deeply seated that I had worked on them, but there's still some residual left behind that I need to finish mastering if I'm going to completely let it go.
Oh, and it's true. It takes time. And it takes time, it becomes a habit to focus on other people and their problems instead of looking at ourselves. It's a habit that has to be broken, and it takes practice and it takes time. And sometimes it takes a buddy or a partner in your life saying, okay, remember you asked me to keep you accountable to this. So what are you doing?
Yep.
You're doing your same routine. I mean, my parents are really big on that with me, because they're like, all your life you have wanted to take care of other people. Like all of your life you've taken care of other people to the detriment of yourself.
True.
And I have, I would give anybody anything that I have. And I have done that to the point where I literally have nothing. And because it makes me feel better about myself. What is that? I don't have to give everything away, all of who I am, to everybody else, to be proud of myself and to love myself.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that
I can't really love them unless I love myself first.
That temporary feeling of fulfillment we have when we give ourselves away is the cheap pizza that's come to our door.
Mhm.
And it's not lasting at all. It's not abundant whatsoever.
So I have something that we haven't discussed about this that is an interesting thought that just occurred to me.
Sure.
I've never looked at myself as a victim mentality. I mean, I've tried very hard over my life not to be the victim of things and be the survivor. However, is it possible that by being the white knight and trying to fix other people's problems, that it is because it allows us to be disappointed, therefore become the victim because we weren't able to help them, but it was their fault?
That's interesting. Because one of the things we haven't talked about is that the opposite of the white knight syndrome is the martyr syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of can go hand in hand. Usually it's the martyr that feeds off of the white knight. And you can always tell because all their stories are around how they're the victim. But in the end, we become the martyr as well. And we don't have the responsibility for the breakdowns. Hey, I did everything I could. I loved them with everything I had. I gave them everything I have. It's not my fault this thing fell apart. Yeah. And we in turn become the martyr and the victim.
Mm-hmm. And it was just while we've been talking about that, I'm like, you know what? This feels kind of profound. Like there were times where I took on that martyr role because they didn't want to listen to me or do what I said or whatever. And then I became the one that was taken advantage of.
And it all comes down to the avoidance of mastery of self. That's what you're really doing in all of that, whether you're the white knight, whether you're the martyr, whether you're flipping back and forth between the two. It is all about avoidance of working on really the core of who you are and who you're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about setting that aside to focus on something that gives us temporary satisfaction, temporary fulfillment, but in the end sets us up so we don't have to be harsh on ourselves and take accountability for our own creation that we have.
So let me ask you, for those out there that are actually listening to us and realizing and recognizing some things right now about themselves, whether it be male or female, how do you stop trying to be the white knight? Like,
So
how do you go through that process?
Great question, and I'm going to answer it for you. And it was a ex-heroin addict Baptist preacher named Mark that I met in Idaho that gave me the best advice. If you spend your time doing the do's, you won't have time to do the don'ts. If you spend the time working on yourself, practicing self-love, practicing self-mastery, you won't have times to be the martyr. You won't have time to be the white knight. You won't have time to do the unhealthy things that keep you stagnant in your growth and in who you're supposed to be. If you do the do's, you won't have time to do the don'ts. It's less about, you ask any addict or anyone that, like, I smoked years ago when I was really young. I stopped concentrating on trying to quit and just didn't smoke anymore. It sounds more simple than that, but it was. I was focusing so hard on trying to quit smoking that all I ever thought about was smoking. And so it caused me to have a nicotine fit. It was really, really, really hard. Once I got to a point where I went, and it was my mom that gave me the advice. She said, every time you feel like having a cigarette, don't. And I was like, it can't be that simple. But the truth was, 22 hours out of the day, I didn't smoke. It was only when I got out of the car, when I had dinner or whatever like that. So I just had to only worry about it in that moment. Every other part of it, I didn't have to worry about it. So whenever I had my little craving, I would go, you know what, this time I'm not going to do it. And I chose to do something else in that moment, just that moment. That's all I worried about was that moment. And then I would worry about the next time it would happen. I'll worry about it then. I'm not going to worry about it now. So I spent my time doing the do's, which was eating healthy, exercising more, getting out and doing the things that I needed to so that I didn't need to do the don'ts.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
That makes sense. I know it's really simplified, but
it is. But it can be that simple. For me, it was, I am not getting sucked into this with this person. Like, they're bringing me their problems and I'm going to empathize with them in the moment. I'm not going to give them advice. I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to go the opposite direction because I don't need that in my life.
All right. So what's the opposite? Let's talk about some of those. Let's do some examples. What are some examples of doing the opposite then? So when someone comes to you and you know they feed off of you negatively, like how many of us have those friends who we've given the same advice to over and over and over and over and over again, but they keep coming back? All of us. Every hand listening should be raised right now.
Right.
What is a healthier way? And I'd love to hear your answer on this. What is the healthier way to handle someone like that?
I have actually become a lot more direct as I've gotten older. And, you know, a lot of people are like, really, you're 46? Yeah, I'm 46. And I have become a lot more direct in a positive way. And I'll give you an example of this. So there was a person in the last couple of weeks that is having a lot of trouble with one of her children. And there's other people that I know that are wanting to help her. And while we are sitting there talking to this person about her child, and this other person is like, no, I want to help. Give me 2 weeks. Like, I'll help. I'll, you know, teach a hobby. I'll do this. Like, let me help your child, you know. And all of a sudden, the conversation went from about the child to her being the martyr and, you know, trying to suck us into how horrible life is and all of these things. And it was about her. And the other people that were sitting there with me were actually shocked at how direct I was, but also loving and kind, because there is a balance there, right? I'm not just going to be a witch. Like, I'm going to have a balance there. And I touched her and I was like, listen, I know that this is really hard and there's been a lot of challenges in your life that have led you guys all to this point. And I know that you don't recognize that you do this, but you do. You just made this all about you and not your child. I said, and I say that with absolute love, because I understand that it's hard not to see that. But right now, we need to focus on your child and not you. What is best for your child? Because right now, your child's future is headed in a very dangerous place. And you have people here that want to help you with your child. So I need to ask you to take all of your ego and everything about you feeling like a failure of a mom and all of these different things. And I'm asking you to put that aside and do what's best for your child.
And you know, the funny thing is very few people do that. And it's one of the reasons why these cycles are perpetuated. Very few people give the mama or papa bear smackdown to their friends and do it in a loving way.
Well, and the other people that were sitting there who are people that I know very well, they were like, it's almost like when I do something like that, people want to put a shield around themselves to like avoid what's coming, right? And I could feel the shield going around them as this is going on. And then afterward, they both looked at me and they're like, you were like extremely direct in that conversation, but it had to be said. And it was actually received really well.
Yeah.
Like, we were surprised at how well it was received.
Yeah, because most people are scared of rejection. Most people are scared of losing people more than they are of being dishonest. They would rather live a comfortable lie than face an uncomfortable truth for a moment, even if it means becoming and doing and being better. And
I bring up that example for my back needs cracked. I bring up that example for the reason that that is very different than how I would have even handled that conversation 3 years ago or 4 years ago. I would have gotten sucked in to the issues. I would have listened intently. I would have tried to come up with solutions to help her instead of just her child. I would have offered to be there for that person for continued conversation about those things. And now I'm at a place in my life where I'm like, and I pointed it out in that conversation. I was like, these are the choices you have made. These are not the choices your child has made.
Yep.
And they are paying the price of the choices you have made. Which was like a real smack to the head, but And it wasn't that I was trying to smack her upside the head. It was, you need to remove yourself and what's best for your child at this point. Like, it has everything to do with your child. It has nothing to do with you, because these choices are taking this child down this path. And right now he's at a pivotal point where he can either choose to survive all of this, or he can choose to embrace it and end up in jail. Like, that's where we are.
I actually enjoy being that way now.
I do too. There's a freedom in that.
Yeah, it actually took a long time for me to get there. Well, I was like that at one time in my life, and then I fell into the habit, like I said, of being the white knight, and really trying to feed off of other people and get other people to love me the way I was desperate to be loved. But when I let go of all that and learned truly not to take anything personally, it's interesting, because most people are scared of losing their relationships, but you will actually strengthen every good relationship in your life by being that way. And it'll still be a shock to most people when you are that blunt. And again, you don't have to be an a-hole to be that blunt.
Right.
You can be loving, you can still be kind, but still tell them, look, this is the absolute truth of it. And stop creating and perpetuating that cycle of martyrdom and making them, feeding them the cheap pizza that they're asking for. Instead, you give them of something of more of abundance that's more fulfilling, which is truth. They'll actually be more fulfilled, and they'll want to seek that more than the temporary fulfillment of the cheap pizza.
Well, and I had a friend a couple of years ago that it got to the point, and she knows, like, if she listens to this podcast, she knows that I'm talking about her. We're still very good friends to this day. It was a snap. It was an eye-opening experience for her. Like, holy crap, she's right? Like, it was one of those moments where me being direct was the best thing for her. Like, it was what she needed to hear, but nobody was willing to say to her. And it was very, very simple. It was that she had become very negative in her life. Like, every time I spoke to her, it was complaining about this and complaining about this and complaining about that, to the point where, like, I would avoid her phone calls or avoid seeing her, because I'm like, I can't take all this negativity. It's like killing me here, right? So one day she called me, and this was almost exactly 2 years ago this week. And she calls me, and I'm like, you know what? I need you to come over. Can you come over and have a conversation with me in person, please? Because this was not a phone conversation, right? This is, if you love somebody, like, this is a real in-person conversation. And she came over and she's like, well, what's going on? And I'm like, you know, I love you, but you've become a bed bug. She's like, what does that mean? And I said, you have become so negative about your life and everything else around you, your job, your marriage, your health, your this, your that, like anything, everything, that you have become a bed bug that is infesting other people with your negativity. And I love you, and I love you enough to explain to you why I can't hang out with you all the time, because it's infesting my mind. And I don't want that to be contagious on me. I don't want to be infested with negativity. I'm influenced by negativity in my life, and I start to become very negative, and I have to protect myself from that. So I don't know where to go from here with this conversation, but do you see what I'm talking about? Like, even a little? And she was like, yeah, I do see what you're talking about. And she, like, owned it in that moment. And I don't think she would have owned it had I not had that type of conversation with her. We could be here 2 years later, still having the same conversation that we were before that moment. And she goes,
most people don't want to be fixed. They feed so much off the drama of the lives that they create that they really don't want that to end. Again, right. It's that cheap pizza that they keep eating, and they keep going back to it over and over and over again.
Yeah. And I told her, I said, so until you decide to make changes in your life that are best for you, and you're going to have to figure those out, these are the topics that I'm not going to talk about with you. I'm not going to discuss these things anymore. I don't want to hear it. And I'm saying that out of love, because if I'm saying that to you, that means there's a lot of other people that probably feel the same way.
Yep. Absolutely.
And she's like, you're right. And then all of a sudden she calls me back like 2 days later and she goes, oh my gosh, I came home and told my husband what you said. And he agreed with you. He said, I am that person. We had never even had that conversation. He's just been sitting here listening to this nonsense this whole time and never ever said to me, you've become really negative.
Well, and the thing is he might have tried, and she's,
she wasn't open to it,
Yeah.
right? She wasn't.
Especially with those that are super close to us. Yeah, we're so used to feeding off of people that will, we talked about that in a previous podcast about communicating with men. If you snap at a guy, if he tries to give you some advice, he'll just, okay, I'm done. All right, you're good. I'm stopped.
And God forbid you need the help from it later.
Right. And I got to that point in my life. I'm like that too. Like the minute someone starts to argue with me, I love healthy discussion. I don't mind disagreeing whatsoever, but the minute it turns into an argument, I know for a fact nothing's getting solved and I'm out. Yeah. No. It's just not worth the energy. My energy is precious to me. It's valuable, and I'm not going to give it away to people that just want to do drama. So I
agree. I will sit here for like 2 hours and let somebody rant or whatever about whatever they want, but I refuse to get into an argument with them. Like I'm not going to do it. But sometimes
you'll really sit there you'll sit there for 2 hours and let them argue.
It depends on who it is.
Oh, I was going to say, wow. See ya. Let me know when you're done.
I have to tell you guys, Jay is over here on the couch laughing right now because he knows what I'm talking about. I will sit there forever. And then all of a sudden, I'll just like, you know what? I'm done. Here's my point. Blah, blah, blah. I'm walking away.
You know what? Women sometimes just need to vent. They don't even need the man to even hear them. When I was married, I made this thing called the talking stick, right? Because I had learned that women don't always need men to fix things for them. So I created this talking stick. It hung in my office, and it was the ugliest thing, but I just gone to Michael's. I bought this plaque, and I bought these dowels, and I glued them in, and I got this big dowel, and I put this cheesy looking ivy on it. It was all stained, and it said the talking stick on it. And anytime she needed to vent and not have me solve something for her, she would bring me that stick and hand it to me, and it would knock me out of the husband white knight fix it mode. And I would just, I'm going to be honest, half the time I didn't even hear half of what she said. I just knew that all she needed was someone to sit there and go, that sucks. Wow, that's horrible. She did that? Oof, must be hard working with her. Okay, cool. And then that's it. And she feels completely satisfied and fulfilled. I didn't have to fix anything or waste any energy on trying to be the savior. And I'd go back to what I'm doing. I wouldn't even remember what she was talking about, but she'd be like, thank you so much. And it's not rude, but I gave her what she needed.
Right.
And the thing, because before that, every time she came to me to talk about something, I'd be like, oh yeah, well, this is what you got to do. And this is, you got to fix this, and you got to, and she would be like, oh, you're not even listening. And she'd walk off, and I'd be going, what the hell just happened? Like, I thought I was being a good husband by helping her fix this and giving her the advice she needed. No, she just needed to back. Okay.
It's that language of heroes. It's funny because you had told me that, and then one day Jay and I were bickering back and forth, right? Because I wanted to just talk, like I wanted to vent about something that I didn't say that. And then halfway through us bickering, like I got this big grin on my face, and he's like, what? Like, why are you grinning right now? Like he was about to get really upset, right? And I just start grinning, and he's like, well, obviously something just came to mind because you have that like aha moment thing on your face. And I'm like, this is like what Ed was talking about, where he had this talking stick, but it wasn't talking stick like when I have it, you can't interrupt me, which is how my ex used to use it, which was really annoying when that thing came out. It was the talking stick of, I don't need you to fix something. So, okay, so we need to backtrack, because right now, all I needed to do was vent. Yeah. I just needed somebody to listen so I could process it in my head and get it out. And that helps me sometimes. So I don't need you to fix it. I don't need any of that. I just need you to listen to me so that I can process and get it all out. He's like, oh, okay. Well, that went really well after that. And he's like, well, I did really well. Like I didn't try to fix it. I just listened. And I'm like, yes, you did. Because sometimes I just need to hear it out loud to see how ridiculous it sounds.
No, that's true. That's true.
And you feel kind of stupid sitting in a room and talking to yourself and just getting it out.
And it's not always easy for us as guys to read your mind and know what you do need. You know, our automatic setting is to love you, to help lift you up, to be your partner. That's who we want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our automatic go-to. So we need something to go, nope, that's not what I need this time.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. Well, is there anything that you'd like to say out to our audience today that you want to stick with them, you want to resonate with them when it comes to the white knight syndrome?
All of this comes back to, again, practicing self-love and self-mastery first at the core and allowing the rest of your relationships to adjust. When you learn to be unconditional in the love for yourself, you will allow yourself to change and figure out what it is that you have broken in your little magic kitchen, and that you allow other people to feed you in negative ways. That's the only way you're going to recognize really which side of the spectrum are you on. Are you the martyr or are you the white knight? Or are you sometimes both? Do you switch back and forth? Working on that self-love, working on that self-mastery, you'll start getting to a point where change comes easier, change comes in abundance, and your life is just going to be so much more blessed and easier when you can have conversations without any insecurities, without fear, without ego wrapped up in it. Things go so much smoother in your life. People just feel that in your presence when you're around them, and you will become a way more powerful influencer and friend and lover to the people that are in your life.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. So Eddie, if people want to contact you, how do they find you?
You can find me, Eddie Cunningham, on Facebook is my speaker page, Edified Living on Instagram. And we'll be having a website coming out here in the next couple of months too as well. That's going to be showcasing the beginnings of the book. And you can book speaking engagements through that as well.
Awesome. So you can find me on tinavaliant.com. You can also find my book, Finding Your Voice, out there at Amazon, Walmart, Barnes and Noble. It is out there syndicated on every possible search engine at this point. So you can also find me on Facebook. So you can look up Finding Your Voice, which is my page that I post these podcasts on, as well as you can find me just as Tina Valiant. So thank you so much for tuning in today. We hope that you are practicing self-care, self-management, not trying to fix other people. And that's why we are bringing all of these things to light right now. So take care, everybody.